The most important thing that I've gotten out of this entire experience, I would say, is to be yourself. Not everyone's going to like you, and that's fine. You don't have to work with everyone, and you shouldn't. And not everyone wants to work with you, and that's okay. You don't actually need to work with everyone. If you successfully create a few hundred high-quality relationships over a few years, that is significantly more valuable than how many followers you have on LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter. I mean, there are perks to this, right? We've talked about a lot of the hard parts and the negative side, but you get to be yourself, and you need to be yourself because you are the person responsible. And if you try and act like somebody else, everyone can tell that you're being fake, right? Yeah. Nobody wants to deal with fake people. It's sleazy and it just doesn't feel right, and people aren't going to deal with you. That's what the freedom of entrepreneurialism, I guess, is to me.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Job Seeker's Journey podcast. This is part 2 of my conversation with Zac Coplon, the president and co-founder of a company called Forecast. If you haven't listened to that first episode, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to that one first, as we put a bow on some of the topics that we had started to talk about in the first episode. In particular, we get more into his motivation to want to become an entrepreneur. He starts out mainly talking about the financial aspects of becoming an entrepreneur, but as we got to talking, more of his actual motivation for wanting to start his own company begins to be revealed. In addition, I share a story about a characteristic of mine that was considered a negative by a previous boss that is part of the motivation and drive that I have to want to do this podcast for you. So without further ado, here is the rest of my conversation with Zac Coplon. So we'll play a little bit of a hypothetical game. I mean, it's not untrue, but we're going to play a hypothetical game.
Okay.
So if I was coming to you and I said, Zac, you did something that I'm wanting to do. I'm wanting to strike out. I'm wanting to start my own company, and I'm wanting to figure out what all I need to do. What's probably the top advice that you would immediately give someone like me who's coming to you and saying, hey, I want to start something. You've done this. What have you learned?
Well, I would probably start by asking questions. First one would be like, are you nuts? If you say no, then you probably shouldn't do it. If you're like, yeah, I'm kind of crazy. Okay, well, next question's coming then. A lot depends on where the person is in their life, right? Like, am I at a point in my life where I can even do this? If I'm not, maybe this isn't a good idea. If I am, maybe we should keep thinking about it and talking about it. I think that starting something, if a person is at a point in their life that is very tumultuous and they're not in, and I'm not necessarily talking about financial stability, but where the person is, with themselves. Am I happy with myself? Am I going to be okay? If this doesn't go well, is it going to completely destroy me as a person, or am I going to be okay? Because you're probably going to fail. You have 95% chance statistically of failing. So know that going in, right? It's not a high percentage situation of success. So you have to be prepared to fail. You don't approach it like, I'm going to go fail. You're always going to win, right? You got to put a smile on it, go out there, and you're always the best. And, we're selling something, so have to have a good attitude. But I would ask the person, I would want to know how they were doing. Like, are you good? Are you at a point in your life? What is your relationship and your home situation like? Do you have a new baby that's 3 months old? Do you and your spouse hate each other and you're about to get a divorce and that's going to wreck your life 6 months into the company? I mean, there are plenty of challenges that exist within startups that don't have anything to do with your personal life, right? And if your personal life is in shambles or it's challenged beyond repair, then it's probably not a good time. Or you could do what I did and say, I don't really care. I'm going to do it anyways. Because I wasn't exactly like in a good place for the start of either one of those companies necessarily. I probably thought that I was at the time, but looking back on it, it's like, was I financially stable? No. Was I in a good place at the time? No. But some people have that, mess around and find out mentality. That's probably not as common or necessarily suggested. But I mean, it sounds a lot easier to start a company when you're at a very stable point in life.
Sure.
And I think if we're talking about a person that is in a committed relationship, a marriage, the person on the other side of that relationship is critically important. If you're in a relationship with someone, we'll just say you're married, right? If you're in a marriage and you have a partner that is supportive, then that's great. You need that because it's going to be hard and it's going to suck at times, probably most of the time in the beginning. If you're in a relationship that is not stable and you've constantly got somebody behind you that is complaining and second guessing what you're doing, you don't have time for someone else to second guess. You're going to second guess yourself enough every day in the beginning.
Sure.
I'm fortunate in my situation. My wife, Katie, she's just like, okay, go do it. Do a good job. Katie has never second guessed what I'm doing one time, which is remarkable. And I don't think it's necessarily that common. So having a very supportive spouse, if that's the point of life that you're in, is a lot. And having a spouse that is constantly second guessing or unsure if this is the right thing for you / us, that is counterproductive. And I would not go into a situation if I was in a personal life situation moment where there was somebody over my shoulder that was constantly asking, like, when are we going to make money? Are we going to make money? Are we going to be okay? Because you don't know. I had a conversation with her one time. I think one time she did ask me, my wife, Katie, it's like, what's this look like 5 years from now? Just casually. I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I can show you the financial model. You know what the business plan is because I wrote it on your laptop 4 years ago, probably more like 2 years ago at that moment. But you're not going to be able to give them the right answer. There is no right answer. And they're never going to be able to see what you see because they're not there. The only person that can see the vision is you.
Yeah.
And hopefully your partners, if you have partners in the business, like if you do have partners in the business, they need to be able to see the vision too. And I don't mean, like you said earlier, everything, I can make a piece of paper look awesome. But that's not reality. That's a piece of paper.
Right.
The only person that will see the potential outside of the financial statements in QuickBooks and, is the person who is literally in it. And that can be hard on a spouse too, because they can't see it. No matter how much you want them to, and no matter how much you talk to them about it, they're not going to be able to see it, more than likely, because they're not sitting there involved and truly understanding what's going on behind the scenes. And you're not going to be able to explain it to them. They're not in it.
Right.
So that's
there's been one. Yeah. No, I love what you're saying there. And there's been kind of a central theme that I've found with anybody that I've ever met that has ever started something. There's obviously a resoluteness and a relentlessness to the way that they approach something. And it's almost the love of the process becomes what they're really going for. Because if they're going for a specific result, then as you described at first, it's probably going to be disappointing.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, you start a podcast like I did. I look at the numbers of people that are looking for jobs, and I think, well, there's a built-in 5 million person audience right there. They're all going to want to hear this, and they're all going to immediately start listening to it. And it's right. And that's just not how that works. You've got to stick with it. You got to do the work behind it. You've got to do all that. And you see that relentlessness. And it's interesting because we're in a time that's never been better or probably easier for people to start something. You know, there's online things that people can do. You see it all the time, but it can be a trap, because what you see is someone posting on, say, Instagram or whatever, saying, I decided I was going to do an e-commerce business, and it took me 2 months. And within 2 months, I was making $10,000 a month. And now I work 2 hours a week and blah, 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 blah. Right. And then they're like, we'll sell you our formula. And then you get sucked into this formula, and you may spend the money to get the formula. And then you get into 2 months in and you're making nothing, and you're going, what the heck am I sucked into? So there's a part of this that I think there's never been easier to probably find ways to make money if you really need to make money. But the instant result culture that has been cultivated, especially in our generation of, you know, Amazon came out, it's instant gratification. If I want it, I get it within a day or two. Yeah. Now they even have same day. I want it. It's here. We're good. But that resoluteness of really trying to, I'm going to do this and I'm going to succeed. You know, a lot, you hear about it in entertainment with bands where they're going, shoot, we're going to make it and we're going to keep going. But what they're not talking about a lot of times is that first 10 years where they're playing for 100 people or 200 people, but they stuck to it because they knew that if they just kept going, eventually something could happen, but they didn't know. Yeah. And so I know we're getting on time, and I want to respect your time.
Oh,
so
we're good.
I have a couple more questions for you. They kind of go together, but what would you say since 2020, when you started this, and you can even go back to the oil and gas company before this, if that's where it comes, but where would you say your proudest moment came in this journey of being an entrepreneur?
It's a good question. I don't know. I'm pretty hard on myself. It takes a lot for me to be proud of myself.
Sure.
So there are little victories here and there. I mean, there's some financial benchmarks that once you hit them, you can look at financials, and when you see that number, because this is about money, right?
Sure.
It's not actually about having fun. We might make it look like it's about having fun on social media, like you were saying earlier. You get to see the rosy picture of people's Instagram, and this is the life of a founder, and I work 20 hours a week for my laptop and go skiing. That's not really how it is. That's the pictures that we take for Instagram.
Sure.
So the proudest moments, I don't know. I mean, I think my proudest moments are when the clients have major victories, because then you know that you've actually impacted something, right?
Mhm.
Like recently, I was emailing one of the clients and I asked him, did you guys get that deal done that you've been working on for a long time? And he said, yeah, we closed $8 million deal and we got it done. It's like, oh, wow. Well, that feels good. And I didn't even make money off of that, but that makes me feel good. I think I get more joy from the victories of the clients than mine. I mean, selling a software license is great. We have to sell them to exist and make money and pay for people's salaries. And, you know, we've got people that have kids and kids need to eat. But I like helping the clients. And when they tangibly and like officially have victories that are material, not like we made $50.
Mm-hmm.
One of the very first ones, it was our second client ever. And I was terrible at training the clients in the beginning. I didn't know how. So typically I was just running the software for them. That was its own learning experience. But on one of them, we go over to their office and they've got this deal that they're working on, and it's multiple $1 million transaction. And we drive to their office very quickly, safely, and they need to make a decision. And if it's a yes and it works, then they get to make a lot of money, a whole lot of money. We don't get to make more money off of it, but they do, and that's cool. And that transaction happened, and then, you know, your buddy calls you and says, we got this deal done, and thank you for helping us do it. And when you help somebody make literal millions of dollars with a few hours worth of work, maybe we should be charging consulting fees, actually, now that I say that out loud. But when you help, like, literally change someone's life. Here's another example, and I will not mention the person's name because he already told me he doesn't want me to say this story and dox him. But we have a client who recently went out on his own and previously was working for a big company, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he desired to go out on his own. That's what he wanted with his life. He wants to be independent and go out, do his own thing, not have a boss, be his own boss, be successful, make money, all the things that we want, right? And the first time that we met, he told me that forecast changed his life. Mm. And I kind of shrugged it off and laughed, you know. But then he became very sincere and very serious and wanted me, like, made me, he's like, you need to understand this. Okay. And I'll sit up and I'm really paying attention, and we're in person. It wasn't like over Zoom or something. And he's like, you changed my life. I was like, okay, well, how? It's like, now I can do what I want to do. What I wanted in my life is now achievable. And because of you and this software, my life is literally changed for the better. And we weren't talking about dollars or money or anything at the time, just having the ability to do what he wanted to do in life, which was not previously possible. Mm-hmm. And we sat there and cried. He cried more than me, but like seeing a grown man, it's like hard to say out loud. Seeing a grown man actually move to tears because you have provided something that didn't exist before, that truly did change their life in the way that they wanted it to be changed, that is probably the most rewarding thing.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of, you've already answered my last question for you which was, how do you measure success outside of financial things? I mean, obviously you're trying to make money. You want to do the best you can. I heard it said once, and his name is escaping me. I was just trying to find it. But there's a guy on YouTube that I've followed a bunch, and he was talking about starting companies and people wanting to start a company. And one of the things he talked about was, if you obsess over other people's problems, then you have the building blocks of making a successful company. If you don't make it about you and your financial gain, and you obsess over those other people's problems, then you have the makings of potentially having a successful company. And sure. And that's what I heard with what you were just saying, right? That guy had a problem and he was able to find a solution with what you were able to provide. And that's what brought you the most joy. Yes, you want to make money. Yes, you want to provide for your family. Yes, you want to grow and be as successful as possible. But it's those people who are looking for this, and you know it's a niche, and you know that it's something that's needed, and you were able to provide it. And I'm with you. When I've been a project manager, like, the part that you love is when you were able to provide that solution to someone who needed that. And maybe they hit you up because they knew what you guys did and they knew you would probably get it done. But once you're able to successfully complete that, that is what brings the most joy.
Yeah.
And yeah, they may tell you that, or they may not, but just being able
Usually not too.
Usually not. Normally you're going to hear the negative, right? You're going to hear you, I don't know, whatever it was. Being a PM, I was the face. So I heard all the negative, and I'm sure you do too, right? Anything that could possibly be said negatively, you're probably hearing it. But if you focus on that process and on the problems of the people that you're trying to serve, if you can focus on that, then you have at least the potential of a successful business. And so is there any final words that you would want to say to someone who is thinking about starting a business?
Yeah. You said something when we were having this last part of the conversation that made me think about how I met that last gentleman and how he found us, I guess, and why he decided to become a client in the first place. He told me from the beginning that there are plenty of products, that's always going to be true. We're selling a product or a service, somebody's competing against you. And he told me straight up, fortunately, this is a very blunt, straightforward person, so you actually get the truth and the answers quickly without having to ask and be salesy. It's like, the reason I went with you guys is because I like you. It's like, okay. He's like, I literally would rather give you my money than those other people because I don't like them and I like you. So, point of that being genuine and authentic and not overly salesy, and no one wants to deal with used car salesmen. Typically, it's a cliche for a reason. People want to deal with human beings that they like. Mm-hmm. And that can translate into revenue. But the most important thing that I've gotten out of this entire experience, I would say, is to be yourself. Not everyone's going to like you, and that's fine. You don't have to work with everyone, and you shouldn't. And not everyone wants to work with you, and that's okay. You don't actually need to work with everyone. You probably only need to work with a few hundred, depending on what you're doing. But if you successfully create a few hundred high quality relationships over a few years, that is significantly more valuable than how many followers you have on LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter. I mean, being yourself, and that's part of there are perks to this, right? We've talked about a lot of the hard parts and the negative side, but you get to be yourself, and you need to be yourself because you are the person responsible. And if you try and act like somebody else, everyone can tell that you're being fake, right? Yeah. Nobody wants to deal with fake people. It's sleazy and it just doesn't feel right, and people aren't going to deal with you. And so being yourself, that's what the freedom of entrepreneurialism, I guess, is to me. Whether people like me or not, some do, some don't. I hope more do than don't. I can't help it if they don't. I'm being myself, but at least I get to be myself, and I don't have to act like something that I'm not to achieve my goals.
Yeah.
And that, I don't know what that's worth. It's worth all the stress, apparently, because I'm still doing it. It's worth more than money. It's real freedom as an individual, as a human being. You get to be you. You don't have to be a person that has this title or fits this role or acts in a certain way. You get to be your true, genuine, authentic self, and you probably should do that so people know that they're dealing with a real human being.
Yeah. I love that you say that. And it sounds like when I asked you kind of what was that overwhelming drive, I mean, what you mentioned was financial, but it sounds like when you really dig down into it, that the getting to be you was the ultimate driver of that. And it resonates with me because the thing that I used to be told as a negative of you care too much about people, you're too empathetic of people, right?
Yeah.
You're not as much of a bulldog as we want. Right. I used to get told, I had a boss that used to tell me that all the time. He called me the kumbaya guy.
Yeah.
Now I was effective, but he just didn't like the way that I approached some things. But the thing that he told me that he did not like is the thing that drives me in something like this. Yeah. Because I truly care about the people who are struggling to find a job. The market's tough. It seems like it's never been this tough. And I care about that. And I want them to get this information, and I don't want them to be taken advantage of. And so thus that same quality that I was told was bad ends up being what really drives me to want to do something like this. So,
yeah, I mean, we were raised and grew up in I actually think our generation's pretty cool. I think our age group is a talented, unique set of individuals. Empathy has not been preached as a positive during our, I guess, youth and adult life. Empathy is underrated. Right? Empathy has a negative stigma for some reason. Hopefully that's going away, but caring about people is not a negative, right? You figured that out, obviously, after having people tell you the opposite, but who doesn't want to hang out with somebody that they enjoy and that cares about them? I want to hang out with people that are just there for the sake of money and they don't actually give a shit about you as a human being. Pass. I don't want to hang out with that.
Sure.
I want to hang out with you. and talk about things that really matter in life.
Yeah. Well, Zac, I can't thank you enough, man. I know being an entrepreneur is a busy life, and you've probably got 1,000 things to do, but you jumped on and immediately responded to me. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. And so obviously people can go to forecast.io if they're looking for services that you provide, and they can find you on LinkedIn and other places and things like that. You have funny memes that you post out there, and I love that you have a title of like meme creator or something like that.
Meme Lord. That's one of the perks of entrepreneurialism too. You can make stuff up. You can be whatever you want. Yeah. I've had like 5 titles in the last 6 months, I think, and most of it was just for clickbait, so I could get clicks and route people to Forecast for cast.io, which is the website, and that takes you to a button, and then you click that button and you get a demo. But it's all fun, right?
Sure.
It's a good intent.
Yeah.
It might come across as humorous, and that can also sometimes, I think, lead people to think that you're not like a serious person. Like they're not taking this seriously. Taking it very seriously. It's all intentional.
Sure. I love it. Man. Well, thanks so much. And hopefully our paths cross and we get to have dinner or something if you're ever back in this part of the woods. But man, thanks a lot, and we'll talk again soon.
It sounds great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Job Seeker's Journey podcast. I want to thank Zac for coming on and being so candid and sharing his journey of entrepreneurship. The reason why I wanted to do these episodes is so many of us think, gosh, it would be so nice to start my own thing. But there's so many things that are encompassed in that journey. There's a lot of false promises out there, especially on social media, that tell you can put in minimal time, have passive income constantly coming in, and it'll just be easy and you can do whatever you want. And we all know that it's just not like that. So I want to have actual stories of actual people who have done it so that you can see the full picture, because I want you to want to be an entrepreneur, but I want you to get the full picture as well. If this is the very first episode that you've ever listened to of us, thank you. If you've listened to all of them up to this point, thank you. I can't do this without you. I'm trying to get the word out, but I need your help by sharing with someone who you know is going through a job search. If you have listened to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of the places where podcasts are available, please rate and review. That helps me get it out in front of more people. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and hit that like button and make comments and get this in the zeitgeist so that more people can get this information. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this episode. My name is Brad Stair. It's an honor that you're here, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.